Welcome everyone to today's webinar with Goliath Technologies. Today we're really going to talk about how we can help you transform to be proactive and never be surprised by an end user complaint again when Citrix or VMware Horizon isn't available or performing the way your users expect. By ways of introductions, you have myself. My name's Stacy Leidwinger. I'm with the marketing team here at Goliath. And you also have Avi Lipp, who's one of our technical consultants. Avi, thanks for joining today.
Thanks for having me.
While we wait for others to join in, let's go ahead and go through some basic housekeeping. In terms of our agenda today, we're really going to talk a bit about what are those challenges that end users face when, or not users, but you, the IT pros, face whenever they're caught off guard because Citrix or Horizon or an IT element in that infrastructure is down. We're then going to talk about purpose-built software that can overcome those challenges, and then Avi's going to go ahead and give a demonstration. Our content today is about 25-30 minutes, and we purposely did that to give plenty of time for questions. So please put any question you have in the Q&A section, and we'll get to those at the end. And one question we always get is, will this recording be available? Absolutely. Within 24 hours, you'll have a recording of this webinar in your inbox that you can refer back to or share with any of your colleagues that might find the information interesting. So with that, Avi, let's go ahead and get started. I always like to spend just 30 seconds giving a little bit of background on Goliath for anyone who isn't familiar. Here at Goliath, we offer purpose-built software to monitor and troubleshoot end-user experience issues. And we do that with our embedded intelligence so that we can anticipate, troubleshoot, and document any of those issues regardless of where workloads or users are located. So in regards to today's topic, we've helped thousands of IT pros anticipate and prevent availability issues on Citrix and Horizon so that they can address and resolve them before any user is impacted. And as you can see from those logos today, we do this for some of the largest organizations that have locations, maybe hundreds scattered throughout the US and even the globe. We also have an ease of use and price profile that really fits small to medium-sized organizations. The other key takeaway here is you see a number of healthcare logos. We are known as the Health IT Standard, and that's because we have business and technical relationships with all the major EHR vendors, Cerner, Epic, Meditech, Allscripts. And with those relationships, we have purpose-built modules that allows you to really get visibility across the true user experience, which includes the delivery infrastructure, the EMR, EHR application, as I mentioned, as well as the user behavior itself. And we'll talk about a couple of those examples here later today. So if we go into the challenges, and we hear this a lot from IT pros, especially now with so many individuals working remotely. As you try to manage whether it be Citrix or VMware Horizon, often you are found really caught off guard on your heels because you don't know there's an issue, you don't know that there's slowness happening until an end user submits a ticket. And now you're in fire drill mode trying to go ahead and resolve what that issue is, and you might not have the tools you need to even resolve the issue. And so the question we often hear is, how can I get proactive? And how can I get proactive in a way that allows me to test from multiple locations? Because sometimes where I'm sitting as an IT pro, all of the delivery infrastructure looks like it's working, but I do have these random outages or performance at specific locations. And even now with remote workers, we're hearing that a lot more, and I'm sure you're seeing in your own organization. As you're well aware, any outage or any loss of productivity can be extremely costly to a business. And at this point in a pandemic, no one can afford to lose any of those costs. And then finally, when issues do arise, you don't necessarily have the right tools to really pinpoint where in the delivery infrastructure did an issue occur so that you can resolve it quickly. And so you spend quite a bit of time trying to look at an issue, and you really don't have the right map to identify where it's at. So let's talk a little bit about that last issue, and let me articulate it more. Probably many of you on the phone know this intuitively, that it takes over 15 different vendors, IT elements to come together to deliver that user experience. And this is a slide that many of our clients have taken to their management team to really explain why it's so hard to get ahead of issues. And so let's start really with, where does the initial log-on process start? It starts with the end user. Every one of your end users are unique. Every one of their endpoints is unique. How they work and their behavior is unique. All of that creates unique ICA sessions. Then they are logging in from different locations. Some might be back in the office. Some might be in remote locations. We have some health IT teams here. Even within a hospital, you might get different performance moving floor to floor within your hospital. They might be connecting from a hotspot. So before anyone has even touched the infrastructure or data center, there's a number of elements that make each of these launches unique and different and adds complexity. Now let's get into the data center. You first have your delivery infrastructure. So you're using some type of secure gateway, whether it be NetScaler or others. You've got, if you're Citrix storefront services, you have a Horizon View. You've got your broker services. You have your desktops and your applications. You might have your EMR and EHR applications. Then you have your backend systems, from licensing server to Active Directory. And below that, you have your hypervisor host layer. So here you really see where those 15 plus unaffiliated vendors can all come together. And to add even greater complexity, you might have some of these IT elements on-premise, and others might be managed in a cloud or a hosted environment. And so when a problem does arise and someone complains of a slow logon experience or they can't log in, if you don't have visibility across all of this, it becomes very challenging. And this is where Goliath comes in. We have embedded intelligence and automation that will discover your entire IT delivery infrastructure, all of these elements I just pointed out. We will have hundreds of monitors built in for every condition, failure point, or potential issue that could arise. And then we're going to alert you when an issue does occur, so that based on industry best practices from Citrix, Horizon, VMware, Microsoft. So let's take an example of what we're going to show you in the technology today when it comes to testing availability. We are going to issue a launcher from the location that you're working from. So if you have multiple locations, you might have multiple launchers. That launcher is going to run through the entire logon process as if they were sitting in that specific location. And so let's say there is an issue and logon failed. Not only are we going to alert you that it failed, but we're going to help you isolate with screenshot evidence exactly where that failure point is. In this example, it might be a bad GPO mapping in Active Directory. We are going to run these tests throughout the day continuously so that you know anytime a user is coming on, you're going to proactively identify issues so you can resolve them before they're even impacted. And Avi, if you want to go to the next slide. This is just an example of some of those 100 elements that we're monitoring as we go through there. It's not just looking at a technology, it's running through the network available, all the elements of the infrastructure. It's looking at user and group policy and permissions, right? It's identifying if applications are enumerating. If you're using an EHR application, we're not only logging into Citrix or Horizon, we're also launching Cerner, Epic, Allscripts, Meditech at the same time. We're going through those back-end systems. So this is not a simulation. This is real users logging in and as a user, logging in and touching every one of these IT elements and alerting you if they're down. And in many instances, we have automatic remediation measures that can be taken. So we don't just alert you that there's an issue, we can resolve that issue for you automatically to completely avoid any type of downtime. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Avi, who's going to talk a little bit about how this technology is deployed and then walk through the demonstration. Avi?
Thanks, Stacy. Yeah, absolutely. So the way how it's deployed is you have the Goliath Central Console, which is typically deployed into the company's data center, but it could be in a cloud if that's how you guys want it configured. And then you have these app launchers that are deployed onto a laptop, a VM, or a workstation, whether it's, as Stacy mentioned, at each of your different physical office locations, your different hospital locations, or these launches could be taking place from the cloud as well to simulate remote workers. And the launches are taking place either 24/7. You can have it be launched, say, at 6:30 in the morning, just to make sure that all the resources are available for your end users when they get in for the day. And it's very, very easy to configure. Just as an example, Common Spirit, one of our clients, they'll have this deployed at over 60 different of their hospital locations, so that IT will get a proactive alert if there's any issue at all. And it's very easy to, be proactive on that and make sure, and it's very easy to be scaled to all those different locations as well. So why don't I actually show a quick video of what's happening on the back end of it, and then we'll dive into the technology itself. What I'm going to pull up here is a quick video of one of these Citrix launches actually taking place, where you'll see that the technology will launch a web browser to the NetScaler storefront sign-in page, has the ability to accept any security statements. It'll log in with credentials, just like an end user would, confirm authentication. It'll then navigate through the storefront page. It'll search for the specific resource that you want to test. So in here, it's testing out Acrobat. It's clicks on it, launches it, confirms a successful presentation of the resource, closes it out, and then moves on to the next one. And again, this can be done on a 24/7 basis. We'll have organizations that have thousands of launches taking place per day from various different locations, or you could have it launched just based off of the business needs. Now, say if you were to receive an alert about a particular issue, where you'd want to go to be able to investigate it is within the console itself. And what I'm pulling up right now is the application availability analysis section of the technology. And this is where all those launches are taking place from. You can see the average launch times represented here by this blue bar. And then you have this trend line that shows the overall availability at any point in time. Now, this is our lab environment. All the launches are being successful at this moment, but say if there were any failures, you would obviously be able to see that very quickly, either by the yellow trend line showing that there wasn't 100% availability, or showing that these average launch times either failed. You can also be alerted for a long average launch time. So say if you want to be notified anytime that there was a 60-second log on, you can have the technology alert you to that. You can filter between different date ranges, which is very often helpful for as far as for planning and seeing if any changes in the environment benefited these logons. You can also filter based off of different locations. So again, I mentioned Common Spirit, where they have this deployed to over 60 different hospital locations. And then the specific resources. So say if you're launching some of your EHR applications, Cerner, Meditech, say if you're some of your business critical applications, you can always filter per each of those. At the bottom of the page, you have those additional details such as the date and time, the resource that you're launching, the location where that launch took place from, and then also the session host, and then ultimately whether the launch was successful or if it failed. Now you see all green right now, which again is great, but if there were any failures, you would see at the exact stage where there's a failure represented by a red X mark. Now, this gives you a high level overview, but it's definitely better to be able to dig into the details if there was a launch failure. And that's where you can go to this magnifying glass. By clicking onto this magnifying glass, you're going to get step-by-step details of the logs that took place during the launch. So you're able to see each detail here. So it's navigating to the storefront login page. You can see the screenshot of it entering credentials, navigating throughout the storefront page, searching for the specific resource that you're testing, and then ultimately that it was a successful launch. And this is very helpful because this gets you out of the area of having to ask a user to replicate an issue. You already have all the screenshot evidence right there for you, especially if there was a failure. So say, for example, there's a maintenance window overnight. You all make some updates to a particular application that leads it to not be published. When the technology then runs its course, it would fail at the enumeration stage. Since that application wasn't available to be selected by the technology, you're then given a heads up on that, giving you a buffer period to get ahead of that before end users are actually impacted. So you'll get the proactive alerts, whether it's via email, and then you can also always deliver reports based off of all this information. And as far as being able to set it up and configure it, it is very simple. Under the schedule tab at the top left, you can see right here, you're able to see when all the launches are taking place from. The specific launches that you schedule are right here at the bottom. And it's as simple as being able to just enter some information such as which type of technology, so whether it's Citrix or Horizon, that you're having these launches taking place from, the resource, the site URL where the technology would go to be able to select on the resource, some credentials, the specific resource that you're testing, and then how often that you want these launches to be scheduled. So again, whether you want it 24/7, or if you're looking to have these launches take place at, say, just 6 in the morning to make sure that everything's available before end users get in for the day. And there's plenty of different options to be configured per each specific environment. So whether it's multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, we're able to support all of those. And so with that, what I'm going to do is go back to the PowerPoint section. Let me pull that up real quick and pass it back over to Stacy.
Thank you, Avi. And we did have a few questions come in. We're going to hold them to the end, but please continue having them. We've got only about a couple more minutes till we get there. So what Avi just showed you, it is because of that intelligence where we are identifying each of those elements and knowing when to alert you, we've been able to have great impact across multiple organizations. Total, we've heard from our clients, we've saved over 40,000 hours of downtime. For one major U.S. airline, we support over 2,000 agents that are working from home, this was even before the pandemic, to ensure they always have access to their customer service application. When they lose access, they can't go ahead and service their clients and revenue is lost. Since using Goliath, they have completely avoided outages. We helped another organization prevent a clinical app outage for over 25,000 healthcare workers. Our system alerted them of the issue, they were able to resolve it, and there was no impact. And then we have one health system, Universal Health Services, and we've got some user stories. Happy to send out if you want to send us an email. I'll get posted here at the end, where they literally launch over 15,000 tests every day to ensure Cerner Millennium is available as well as high performing. And in terms of deployment, you can take this and deploy on-premise. You can get up and running literally in less than 30 minutes. Or we also offer this fully as a managed service offering, so you don't have to have any software on-premise and 100% managed for you. With that, one last thing I want to leave you with is if you are interested in a free trial, please go ahead and email techinfo@Goliath Technologies. It is fully supported, and it's for both Citrix and VMware Horizon, and we can get you started. If you have other questions, that's also a great email to get a hold of us. But with that, Avi, we did have a few questions come in, and please, I ask the audience to keep them coming. From Doug, we are hosted in Azure and have 5 locations. How would this work with your technology?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a common setup where you have various locations set up where what we would do is we'd have, a VM or a laptop or workstation, from those locations, having these launches be configured, taking place, and then testing your delivery infrastructure where you're hosted in Azure. So that is a common configuration that we do support.
Right. And Lenny asks, do you support Citrix Cloud?
Yes, we do.
And just to point out, not only do we have support to monitor the health of Citrix Cloud, but we also have a Citrix Cloud connector module that's coming out here in a matter of a week or two, which will also monitor the health of the Citrix Cloud connector as well. Here's one from Sharon. She asks, how much does this cost?
As far as the proactive feature that we've been talking about today, it's only about $3,500 per year. So it's, for the most part, if you consider having a full-time employee that sometimes would have to go to location to constantly test to make sure that everything was working properly, most of our clients say that it's very inexpensive for the value that it provides.
Perfect. And Doug came back and asked, how long is your trial?
So the standard trial is 30 days and it's fully supported where we, white glove implementation to get it stood up and then have a series of review calls with you to make sure that the, information, you understand the information, how to be able to utilize it. So again, standard's 30 days and it's fully supported.
And Raja asks, do I need an agent where applications are hosted?
You would not need an agent where the applications are hosted.
And then we have one from Karen. What other proactive capabilities do you have in the product? And Avi, before you talk to that, I do want to point out one thing. Everything about our solution is proactive, right? I mentioned a few times we have embedded intelligence and automation, which is discovering your entire delivery infrastructure, what to monitor and how to monitor. And then we're going to alert you based on those industry best practice thresholds from Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, AWS, et cetera. And Avi, you kind of hinted at this. One of the reasons these clients that you see here on the screen tell us that they invest in Goliath is because when they use Goliath, it has the same impact of hiring 2 to 3 full-time troubleshooting experts. And that's really how they validated, because we're available 24/7, 365 days out of the year. With that, Avi, though, maybe you want to show, there is one, we have something called the Automatic Discovery and Dependency Map that I think if you're ready, you could bring that up, which really takes that availability testing to the next level and gives you that single view of the health of your entire infrastructure. And with that embedded intelligence and automation, we absolutely alert you when issues are found so that you can proactively address them.
Absolutely, Stacey. I think you hit on a great point that the entire technology is based on being proactive. And so a lot of that comes from the embedded intelligence and automation in the technology, which is based off of hundreds of modern rules that are based off of best practices from Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, where these modern rules are deployed across the entire environment that are looking for hundreds of events, conditions, failure points, and thresholds that can impact user experience and proactively alert you to issues before end users are having to put in the support tickets. And the section of the technology that I have displayed right now is a great example of that embedded intelligence, because upon deployment, we will automatically map out your entire Citrix delivery infrastructure, show you the correlations between the different components, and again, those modern rules that are applied to each of these different components, context specific, drive this as a heat map structure so that as issues start to arise on individual components, say for example, a Citrix broker service error on a delivery controller, that component will turn from green to red or orange depending on the severity of the alert. So that, say again, if that issue does take place on this delivery controller, it would turn red. So you immediately are drawn, your attention is immediately drawn to where you need to look in the environment, and just as importantly, where you don't need to spend any time looking. And as you click on the different components, on the right-hand side, you're able to see resource utilization, context-specific health checks, as well as those alerts that are firing off. So instead of having to wait for a user to complain about poor performance, the technology will alert you to it and also graphically drive where you need to look in the environment so that you can come up with conclusions and troubleshoot as quick as possible and be proactive instead of really reactive.
Great. Hope that answered the question and a little bit more, Karen. She says, thank you.
Sure thing.
All right, next question from Michael. My users complain of slowness during logon duration. Can you troubleshoot that issue?
Absolutely, and that's a very common use case for why people utilize our technology. And there have been times where we're able to cut down on logon times by 80% because of the amount of detail that we do provide. So let me pull up the technology to show how we can be helpful in that scenario. Where I'm flipping to right now is our Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Session Display. And this populates with all the Citrix sessions in your environment, both your active and historical. So if a user says that my logon times have been horrible for the past 30 days, you can pull up all of that user's logons very easily. You can just type in their name in the top right. This will filter so that you can then search for that user, and you can always sort by logon duration so that if you want to take a look at all the long logon times in the environment, it's very easy to do so. When you really then want to investigate as far as what's the root cause with a long logon, you click on that user's name, and what will populate is a summary screen that has all the high-level key data points that went into this user session, including logon duration metrics, so that you're able to see here. You have a logon summary that gives the high-level overview of the logon process, how long it took, the different areas of the logon process. You're also able to see information such as the client endpoint, how they connected into the environment, internal versus external. So, say if external connections are having to log logon times, but internal is fine, it's easy to identify that. The delivery controller that's brokering this session as well. And by going to this logon duration tab here, and I'll zoom in just so that we can all see it a little bit better, is that you are able to get with Goliath 33 plus different stages of the logon process. With other tools, you'll get about 6 or 8 different stages. And so as far as some of the details that we provide that assist in troubleshooting long logons, at the top here, you have all the different stages from the brokering stages of the logon process. So what's happening at the delivery controller. So, our drive mapping issues, profile load, logon scripts. The top right, what's happening at Citrix receiver. So, the ICA file download, session creation. And that's without deploying any technology to the endpoint machine itself as well. This is all through our integration with Citrix. And you can quickly see the duration of each stage, and it's supported by a Gantt chart. So you can quickly identify where the main contributing factors to a long logon are. And then at the bottom, you have the logon stage details from the session host. So client and server validation, authentication, you're able to see which OUs that user was a part of, the domain controller that authenticated the session. And then we will show you each group policy down to the policy name and how long each one took to execute. Now, let me pull up a screenshot that I think does a great job of demonstrating the value that clients do get from this, where here you can see that there's a long logon time. You then quickly see that profile load was consuming most of the time. You then see in the logon stage details that group policies were taking 190 seconds to load. And then in this particular case, it was a VDI drive mapping policy that was incorrectly mapped that was taking the majority of the time. So then with the technology, you can quickly identify that and focus your attention on where you do need to resolve the issue. And again, clients have been able to cut down on logon times by 80% in some cases.
Great. Thank you, Avi.
Sure thing.
While you did that, we had a question from Rishi, and he asked, can you report on usage of Citrix and when people are using Citrix? Management asks me often if we can tell if people are working when they're working at home. We hear this a lot.
Yeah, we hear this all the time. I'm on calls daily with people who are asking for this, and we actually can. We're the only company out there that really can provide that level of insight. So, this is often stemming from where all of a sudden you have, a lot of remote workers where you're used to being able to see their level of productivity at the office, but now that they're working remotely, management wants that type of visibility to understand, was my user actually working, not just did they log in and log off. And so what we have is our end user productivity report. I'm going to share this out right now. Again, we're the only company that has this. And this is going to show you at a high level the level of interaction that user was having within their session. And I'll go through the metrics that we provide here, where from left to right, you have the users, the client IP address, how they connected into the environment, when the session started. So we'll start off with Randy here. His session started at 9 o'clock. He then logged off at 5. Duration of the session was for 9 hours. His interaction metric, this is really the key metric here, is this metric comes from a couple of different data points, such as mouse clicks, keyboard input generating ICA traffic. And so Randy interacted within his session for 7 of those 9 hours. So he had an interaction percentage of 78% of the time. And so it does give that level of visibility to understand, okay, are my workers, able to be as productive as they would be at the office? Sometimes we see that they're more productive. Sometimes previously high-performing workers are having trouble in this work from home scenario. Their interaction percentage is low, and then IT knows that, okay, maybe something needs to be done there.
Great. And Rishi came back and said, what other reports do you offer?
We have a number of different reports. So whether you're looking to monitor on end user experience, here, let me actually, I do have a slide for this. I'll just kind of share this one out where we're able to, end user performance, so end user experience, logon duration, latency metrics. In the center, you can see end user activity, so productivity that we just went over, peak usage times, license usage times. And then on the right-hand side, you're able to see system performance, so server health, VM performance, hypervisor hosts. So it gives you all of this data that you can do a number of different things with, including you being able to share this, you're able to integrate it, and you're able to enhance it in a number of different ways. And let me pull up actually some of these examples that I do have. And all these reports can be run on demand, daily, weekly, monthly, can be sent up to different business line managers. So the flexibility combined with the broad and deep subset of data is something that our clients tell us is very valuable to be able to report on, especially for performance and then also capacity planning moving forward. And what I'm sharing out right now is an end user experience report where and these are all just a couple examples. You're able to see log on duration, ICA latency. Here's a XenApp license usage by site, so you can be able to plan for the amount of licenses that are needed. And then here's for VMware as far as the VM resources being in network throughput specifically here. So, basically if it's in the delivery infrastructure, we'll pretty much be able to run a report on it.
Great. And I have one last question. So if you have others, please do submit in the question or chat box. This one comes from Sarah. How are you different from Citrix Director and other free tools?
Yeah, that's a question that we hear frequently. And so the biggest difference, I'll say a couple of the differences between us and Director is that Director is good at pointing out for things, with Citrix and solely Citrix. But the thing is that we all know that there's so many different vendors that go into being able to support a satisfactory user experience that it's not just Citrix data that's needed. You need to be able to see everything that's going into end user experience. And what I'm showing out right now is what you'll be able to get with Director is anything that's really not red. But with Goliath, you're able to get insight onto the endpoint, the remote locations, the bandwidth that's available at those specific locations for Citrix specifically for the end user. You can have those synthetic launches that take place from the console itself. We bring in the EHR modules that was mentioned, the hypervisor platform, the backend systems. And so being able to have all of this data in a single console that you have the information both active and also historically is really overall one of the big differences between us and Director, that you can also then report on all the information and be able to get a full visibility of the entire delivery infrastructure.
To that point, I was actually doing a user study earlier this week, getting ready to publish, and I was asking them, what made them come to Goliath? And what they told me is they had been using Director for a while, but they lacked that visibility. There was none of that embedded intelligence and automation that were showing them everything. So in a single pane of glass, they could see every single IT element that impacts user experience, just as Avi said, right from the endpoint to their behavior, all the way through the delivery infrastructure, all elements. And this individual happened to be also a health system. And so our purpose-built modules for Cerner, Epic, Allscripts, Meditech, that was absolutely a key differentiator. Because if you're using Director or other free tools out there, you're not going to get visibility into those EHR performance metrics. And some of those EHR applications are hosted, making it even less visible to you unless you have tools like Goliath. All right, Avi, if you want to pull up the tech info email, that was the last questions that came through. I do want to thank everyone for joining today. When you close out of the webinar, there's going to be a short survey. It will take you less than a minute to complete. We'd love to get feedback from this webinar. Did we present and meet your needs? Also looking to just understand a little bit more about your infrastructure so we can tailor our follow-up. So please take a few minutes and fill that out. And again, if you want to trial the ability to test the entire Citrix or Horizon infrastructure along with applications that are deployed, please email techinfo@goliathtechnologies.com and we can get you set up and running really by end of day today with a trial of the software. Right, Avi?
Yep. Very easy to get set up.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, and the recording will be showing up in your inbox shortly. I hope everyone has a safe and great day. Bye, Avi.
Thanks for your time, everyone. Thanks, Stacy.